Hey, all you wonderful folks out there listening. This is the Random Jam podcast. I'm Lane Mitchell.
I'm Reese McKinney.
And we're coming to you from Dallas, Texas. Here on the podcast, we cover all entertainment, such as music, movies, television shows, things of that nature, and we bring it to you, the listeners, at home.
So this is episode 1, and basically to break it down for you, we take all these different topics such as movies, TV, music, and comics, and break it down into little segments and talk about each one, how we feel, what we're passionate about, and then we take those and we bring them out into little clips that we can bring to you each week that you can kind of digest in little portions. And then after all those have been dropped, we'll put out an audio version, audio only, that will have the entire show that you can listen to from beginning to end.
All right, well, without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive into it. And with the first question, which is probably on everyone's minds right now in America, and that is, what are you doing during free time during quarantine? So what about you, Reese? What do you got going on during quarantine?
So quarantine has been very interesting. Every day is Saturday, it feels like. So there's really no such thing as the weekend anymore. But basically, I've been diving into a lot of movies, listening to a lot of albums and a lot of new music, constantly searching for that. Finding some TV shows to watch, definitely trying to find things to distract me from this strange time that we're in right now. Lots of great entertainment out there, whether it's physical or digital. But yeah, what are some things that you're doing with your extra time?
It sounds pretty similar to my list. I mean, lots of digesting a lot of music, television shows, movies, video games. Definitely the house has been cleaner like never before. The house, I've done tons of, yard work, housework, just picking up. That's how bored I've been.
Lawn won't mow itself for some reason.
Yeah, I know. If only we had an AI to do that, that'd be very handy. maybe I'll come up with that, and then that'd be my big invention.
Yeah, quarantine has been very interesting, especially with how the world is right now, and just all the different kinds of news that we're hearing, and just everything's just so up in the air. So the best thing for me is to find all these things that what were you talking about today as kind of a distraction during all this, but making use of the time that we have in the best way possible. I feel like that's the main goal here, is what can we do while we're at home to kind of work on ourselves or work on different projects that we probably didn't have as much time to do before, and possibly come out of this with a lot of productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's, you start to get creative in times like these because, what you thought about doing before or not doing before, your viewpoint kind of switches and you're like, oh, I guess I could do this, something that needs to get done. Like, for instance, we cleaned probably, I don't even know how much of the garage, but it was a mess before. Now it looks great. And it's like, wow, just took that little bit of time just to get it done.
Exactly. Yeah, we've thought about like so many different projects, whether it's painting things or building things or minimizing stuff that we have. We've been looking for just so many different things to do with all the extra time, and it does get a little overbearing at times. Sometimes it's you're just like looking for the next thing, and you're like, okay, I'm not sure what that is yet, and you just kind of brainstorm and like, oh yeah, there's this I got to do, or oh, I'd really like to pay more attention to this. So that's kind of been the challenge, is making sure that flow of productivity is going, because I feel like that's what this is all about. It's kind of problem solving and kind of giving everybody a chance to pump the brakes. I know it's a weird way to do it, but that's just how the world works sometimes. And so using this the best way you can, with what you have and the resources that you're given at home, there's no telling what you could accomplish.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy to think that, if you don't put a deadline on something, you think, well, I got all the time in the world. It's kind of like, you can go one or two ways with that. You think, oh, well, since I got so much time, I can just chill. Or I got so much time, I'm going to take advantage of it.
Exactly.
So, polar opposites. But yeah, it's funny at the beginning part of quarantine, I was like, I got time. And then now I'm like, oh, I got time. I got to do something. Like, I can't just sit
I
here.
got time.
I'm crazy. Yeah, I got time. Incredible said. Yeah, I turned into Mr. Incredible post his, star days. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is bad. I need to do something. So, yeah, anywho, That about sums it up. So I think that's probably 90% of America is probably doing the same thing as we are, just finding something to stay busy and
That's good
productive.
because distractions during this time are key, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. The time will go by a lot quicker if you have something to take your mind off that.
And we will get through this. I mean, this is something that we're all going through.
Oh, yeah.
People listening right now are probably wondering where it's going to end as well, and where we're going to end up like the new normal that everybody's been talking about that will kind of come out of this, whether that's more contactless deliveries, more um, voice activation or face activation, less touch screens and things like that. It's going to be an interesting world after this, especially with how outbreaks are treated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because human nature is just unpredictable. And so you've learned that with people saying, well, I'm still going to go out and do whatever. But I personally have noticed that just from the few shopping trips I've taken, that people actually are incredibly nice now. Even though the media might portray something else, everyone I've run into has gotten super nice and just like very hospitable. I mean, I'm sure there's a few, out there that are not so much that way, but I think people are getting nice because they're like, well, this might be the end of the world, so don't want to be a jerk.
Well, yeah, and you can't panic. You just have to roll with each day and get and take what you're given. Because one thing I have noticed, is the like you were talking about the how people are treating each other. This is a time where we can really assess what that looks like, and they've coined this phrase social distancing, which I mean it makes sense to a point. You could explain it easily, but to me, I feel like the social aspect needs to be not so distant and more physically distant. Obviously, so we don't, spread anything. But I feel like rather than being socially distant from people, we should be physically distant and more socially involved and connected using different platforms like Zoom or Google Hangouts and FaceTime. Like, I feel like this is a time where, in a world where we're so caught up in the busy day to day and we don't get to see all the people we get to see or get to talk to people, loved ones, friends, family. I feel like this is a time where that could be very useful. And we can kind of dive into what that looks like using these platforms in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that because, yeah, physical distancing is something we obviously need to practice. But like I said, we got so many, you know, outlets such as Zoom or FaceTime or whatever to keep in contact with loved ones, you know, friends and family. Just through that, people don't realize the technology they've got right in the palm of their hand. So definitely need to keep that going during this time because everyone knows how to use, YouTube or Netflix or Zoom or whatever. So it's really not that hard to keep in contact that way. People think we just need to shut off completely from the world. And it's like, well, no, you still have, the tools readily available to you to
Right.
contact with the world.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be important because we are all in this together. We're pushing through. I mean, the more I hear the word together, 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 whether it be advertising, like it does kind of devalue it, but at the same time, that's the truth. We're all experiencing this together. Some people feel maybe isolated or lonely in that fact when that's definitely not true. If you're listening to this right now, we're taking this day by day, and like we said earlier, we can only do um, some of our best work if we take each day as it is and be appreciative of that. Because there's a lot of people out there right now that are losing, loved ones to this crazy virus, and if you're not staying at home, you're not helping people. So just stay home and be safe in that way. But that's all. That's all I have to say about it.
Absolutely. So you heard it here, folks. Just stay at home and we'll all push past this soon enough. There we go. Before we get too deep on that, I guess we should move on to our next topic because
Let's get
we
on
could
to
go
the fun
on.
stuff.
Yeah, I was like, we got the rain part out of the way. Let's go to the sunshine. All right. So first things first, I guess we'll dive right into the movies and TV reviews.
Awesome.
Okay. So what you got on your list? I know you got a few. I got a few as well. You can start off.
So the first movie that I have, and I've been using this time mostly to watch movies and kind of catch up on what's newish, or since there's not many new movies out yet, to find the new-ish movies, and then some
Right.
old movies that I maybe either have watched a long time ago, or that I have not yet to see that I need to catch up on. So the first movie that I've watched that's considered new is a movie called Extraordinary. So I came across this film through Alamo Drafthouse, which is a local cinema where you can eat and drink and watch movies all together. Really fun place. I love the brand. I love the community, and they show a lot of movies that you typically wouldn't get to see at like a Cinemark or AMC. And their rules also are super strict in a good way, where they don't let people on their phone, they don't let people talk. But it's a great place to support. And through their website, they have, in order to keep business going, they have Alamo at Home. So essentially, what that is they have different options where you can stream movies, you can buy some merchandise to support them, and then in some locations, I think in Austin, you can actually order some food, get some curbside delivery, things like
Oh,
that.
wow.
So
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, I love Alamo Drafthouse, and for those of you listening that don't know, Alamo Drafthouse is amazing because I personally like that they at the beginning of every movie they'll basically give you a history of the movie if you're not caught up to date with it, and I believe they're doing that on their website as well. Isn't that right? What you
yeah,
said?
so what he's talking about is the pre-show, which is always fun to watch when you come into the movie. At least 30 minutes
Yeah.
early, you get a little pre-show. It's fun little, like he's saying, history snippets or random clips that kind of get you in the mood and kind of give you a little bit of context of what you're about to watch, rather than having to sit and watch a bunch of local ads. They kind of make it fun, and they actually included that as part of the Alamo at Home experience. So if you go to drafthouse.com, you can go there and help support them because we want them to make it through this. Um, so yeah, buy some merch, shop shop the movies, check out what they've got, and I know they're going to be consistently adding movies as the months go. But this one I found called Extraordinary. Basically, I won't
Okay.
I won't give a lot away because I want it to be a surprise. But basically, the pitch that they give in the description is Napoleon Dynamite meets Ghostbusters. And so essentially, what that is all the quirkiness and fun that you'd get from like Napoleon Dynamite, mixed in with all like the ghost hunting and creepiness and spookiness of like Ghostbusters. So basically, you get what you're sold here and more. Definitely a movie I would check out. It stars Will Forte and a few other actors from the UK that are lesser known, but it's hilarious. It's spooky and it's fun. I'd highly recommend it. So if you go check it out, I can't remember the streaming service that it's on, but like I said, if you go to drafthouse.com, you can stream it. It's only $12, I think, and that's
Okay, that's not too bad.
yeah, and it's a great film to check out, especially something to keep your spirits high.
Okay. Well, awesome. Okay, for my movie, I actually chose Spencer Confidential. It's a movie starring Mark Wahlberg. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. Actually, it was in the top 10 there for a little bit of time when Netflix started doing that. But basically, without giving too much away, the plot of it is Mark Wahlberg is a Boston cop, and it opens up with the scene. Again, I don't want to give much away, but Post Malone is in the movie, which I thought was kind of unusual.
That is
But
very
and he's a Dallas boy, so we got to represent him. But he was in there, and basically he's in prison. So a cop in prison. Okay, obviously he's going to get beat up, and there's a big fight scene that breaks out, and he come to find out he gets out, and you learn through Spencer, Mark Wahlberg's character, that a bunch of the Boston police officers are corrupt, and they're all in on this big grand scheme that's going on. And so basically, the movie takes place and deals with him and his sidekick
mhm.
that go and they basically single handedly try to take down the system. It's very interesting to see how they go about doing so. So definitely check that out. And Mark Wahlberg's the main actor. There's kind of a bunch of no names. His sidekick, I forget his name, escapes me, but I bet we'll be seeing a lot more of him because he did a pretty good job of playing just the big brute, like the bodyguard, his right hand man. So
And it's Mark Wahlberg playing Mark Wahlberg.
yeah, essentially because all the Wahlbergs are from Boston. So I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
I mean, who better to fit this movie? I mean, it basically was like how he was in the other guys, but it's a little more serious, more actiony.
well, that's
So yeah, it's very Mark Wahlberg esque. if you will.
Wahlberg-ish.
Yeah.
Okay,
So yeah, check that one out for sure.
I will. Another movie or movies that I've been watching are by the director Wes Anderson. So if you're not familiar with him, he's actually a native Texan,
Okay.
Houston area, and he's pretty well known by now. He's been in the game for just about 20 years now,
Right.
and all his movies are so interesting. They're quirky. Um, they're very stylistic of his style. He really looks into detail. All of his shots are like very symmetrical. So like you'll have a person either directly in the center or directly in this third, and he plays with depth. And it's just really fun to see those little quirks in his movies. But it's like a consistent style that he uses across all of his movies. But they're all uh, different topics, different people, and different stories with the same kind of actors. So he'll make like his first movie, for instance, is Bottle Rocket, stars Owen and Luke Wilson, the brothers, and he uses that cast of people throughout some of the other movies, such as Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum shows up, Owen and Luke Wilson, Jason Schwartzman,
Wow.
lots of people, Angelica Houston,
Hmm.
um, William Dafoe shows up a few times. So he's got this like cast of actors that he uses in all of his movies and kind of rotates them out. It's really funny because all the movies feel connected, but they're all so different, but fit in this like little pocket universe he's created. But like I said, all the fun, comedy um, and just smart wit that he does with his dialogue and style kind of makes it fun to watch and a really cool experience. So if you haven't checked out Wes Anderson, highly suggest it. Right now, I'm starting with his first movie, Bottle Rocket, and then I'll watch all the way up to Isle of Dogs, which is his most recent film, and it's like a stop motion animation, which he's done two of those, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, and seeing how those movies are made, which is crazy. It takes like 2 years or more to make them because they create all the scenes and shoot all of the frames with the camera and then put it all together at the end. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into that, but he's so detailed with his set design, with his character design, and composition that it feels like a Wes Anderson movie, even though it's animated. So watching all those, I think we only have two more left, and then after those, I plan on ranking them in some kind of format, maybe my favorites or something like that. But definitely looking forward to finishing that series. And then another director series I'm looking forward to is Christopher Nolan. He's got a film coming out hopefully this year. Still, is called Tenet, and so I'm going to watch all his movies leading up to that, which are great movies. He's such a great director, and Wes Anderson, his new
Yeah,
movie, French
absolutely.
Dispatch.
Yeah, that's a neat concept to do that just from start to finish. Just go through a whole discography of all the directors' movies. I'd really like to do that with Quentin Tarantino personally,
Yes,
because very unique, just like Wes Anderson, like you said, just very distinct film style. And like I said, a lot of times we'll have the same actors and actresses come through. You'll see him more than once in his movies. So yeah, I think that's a really neat concept, and all your listeners out there, I think might be interested in doing that too.
yeah, I would argue that Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Christopher Nolan, they're some of the best directors working right now with
Oh
the kind
yeah,
of stuff they're
absolutely.
putting out. And a lot of their movies, a lot of their audience are fans of the directors. So like, it's not necessarily a franchise that people are going to see; it's a director they're going to see. Sort of like how
Yeah,
people do that with actors and actresses.
right. And anything in life, if someone puts a brand on it with their name or logo, they're crazy about it because it's just so unique. It's a
Yeah, it's
unique
like I don't
style.
know anything about this movie, but I know I'm going to like it because this person made it.
Right. Exactly, and that's the truth. Next on the list, we got actually a movie I know you've seen as well, Onward, and
Yep.
that's the Disney Plus movie that's animated and it features Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. And I got to tell you, it was pretty emotional. It was a tearjerker because I
It's
mean, for
very
those of you,
intense too.
yeah, yeah, exactly. A very unique relationship to see Chris Pratt and Tom Holland working together. So I'll explain to listeners if you haven't seen Onward yet. It's about a story of two brothers. Chris Pratt plays the older brother. Tom Holland plays the younger brother. and they're voicing them. And essentially, their dad, you can tell early on in the movie, their dad's not in their part of their life anymore. He passed away for whatever reason. And so one day, well, I'll describe the character. So basically, Chris Pratt's character is kind of the goofy older brother. It's kind of like, oh, hey, I'm goofy and I make mistakes and I'm loud. And Tom Holland's the younger brother is completely opposite. He's like super timid and like, oh, I'm going to be,
Well, they're elves. That's the other thing. It's like in this kind of modern day fantasy kind of world that they've created. And
yeah, because
I think they're elves, right?
I guess so. I don't know. Some creatures they look like elves because they're blue, and so I assume they're night elves or something. But Chris Pratt's character is super big into like Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, basically it's the whole, like you said, the whole scenario is basically a fictional mystical world. But anyway, without giving away too much, basically one day their mom says, "Hey, your dad left this for y'all, and it's a rod that." Come to find out, Chris Pratt's character was like, "Oh, we can bring Dad back with this." And so one day they tried out, and unfortunately, they only had one crystal, and they needed two, and so it only brought half the Dad back, but it was just his bottom half, so from the waist down. So the whole time they're communicating through him, like with their feet, or whatnot. And so the whole journey is they're trying to find the other crystals to get to spend time because they only have 24 hours, so they want to spend time with their dad, and so they go. The whole adventure is them, going to find the crystals. Like, yeah, road trip, a classic road trip movie.
Right. Two brothers on the road.
Definitely, yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I related a lot to the older brother. And he, it was emotional. I shed a tear at the end because, for those who don't know, my father passed away of cancer, and so this one really hit hard with me. But yeah, definitely check it out. I definitely recommend it. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
So you got anything else to add to it?
Well, see, you mentioned that you related to the older brother. See, for me, I'm a younger sibling, so I related more to Tom Holland's character, which was interesting because like you can watch movies like this and get two different reactions from it just based on your own life experience, and that's the beauty of art. Everybody has their own way of viewing things, and especially with your history with your dad, like that plays into this. So that story becomes so layered, and there's so many things that you can latch onto, and that's what makes it such a great movie. Definitely something to check out. It was the last movie I saw in the theater before all this, so you don't necessarily have to see it in the theater to enjoy it, but for sure that story is very strong, and there's so many layers that you can latch onto. If you're not into fantasy, that's not a big deal. If you don't have any siblings, that's not a big deal. It's a great movie all around. But there's definitely those tropes that are played with, whether that be the road journey or the father-son relationship or the brother relationship that they play with, the familiar stuff that we know, but have executed in such a wonderful way that tells a beautiful story.
Yeah, exactly. And just going off of that, Disney does such a great job and with all their movies, really, of painting that perfect scenario and just making a great story. Like you said, there's some Disney movies I love, but I'm like, I don't relate to this at all. But it's just hands down, it's a great movie. Like, you can't deny that. So
some of them aren't made for I've realized over the years that some things aren't made for me, and that's okay because it could really impact somebody else, and that's the beauty of it.
Right, because you can tell someone else is really into it because of this, and this, and you name off the scenarios. But also, Disney just has great music all the time. So
the soundtrack is great. I remember specifically. There's a song by the band Cars from the '80s.
Yes,
and that was really cool. It really set the tone because like it has a lot of different like '80s and '70s songs on the soundtrack, but it really helped set the tone for the movie. It's very laid back and fun, and but yeah, highly recommend that one if you catch it now on Disney Plus or iTunes or something to stream that.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it would be this new movie starring Ed Helms. It's a Netflix original. It's called Coffee and Kareem.
Kareem.
Kind of Kareem, not cream, because it is spelled Kareem.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yeah. So basically, this story is about Ed Helms. He's a cop, and Kareem is
a friend here with the cop movies.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm telling you, I've been big into the crime and cop movies. I don't know why. I get sucked into them. Also, I love Ed Helms, and some people say I resemble him a little bit, so I'm not offended by that. I, in fact, welcome that. But anywho, so with Cop and Kareem, Ed Helms is this cop that's like trying to do good, as most cops do.
Hmm.
And the son Kareem is the son of his current girlfriend. Um, Basically, Kareem has it out for Coffee because he caught Coffee sleeping with his mom, and he's like, "I don't even know this guy. What the heck?" And
Yeah.
so the whole movie is about their relationship of just. And I'll be honest, I didn't like Kareem at first because he just is constantly just bashing at Helms. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
But in the end, you kind of see where their relationship, they start to, kind of take a different turn. Um, so that's basically the whole gist. And it's just a whole bunch of hijinks and pranks. It's definitely more of a comedy action because they get themselves in a situation where you're like, whoa, like, how are they even going to get out of this? Like, you don't think it's even possible. And, but so I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to ruin anything. But
Well,
yeah,
it sounds like that movie and Spencer Confidential could be a really cool double feature one day. As far as like if you want to see two good action movies, one that's a little bit more serious and one that's got comedy, that could be fun. Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
they're both on Netflix, so that would be something to explore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be a good choice because yeah, if you're into crime and action movies, these two are definitely ones you want to watch.
I think
But
I'll
definitely,
try
yeah,
the double feature.
yeah, you should try it out. If you want to go, I'd probably go serious first and then end it with funny.
Yeah.
Uh, my personal preference, so that way you don't end on kind of a somber note. So yeah, that'd be a good idea actually. I didn't even think about that for a double feature.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool double feature options if you go out and research. There's like two movies that you wouldn't think have anything to do with each other, but like watching them back to back, it's just fun for some reason. I don't know any
Yeah,
offhand, but you go out there and look. There's a lot of double feature suggestions out there, but that to me just sounded like an interesting one. But yeah.
yeah, that would for sure because yeah, it's kind of contrasting, but at the same time, it's still got a common theme involved.
Hmm.
So yeah, there you have it. So I'll leave it at that. So, do you have any other TV shows or movies to talk about?
No. Oh, wait, I do have one. So
Oh,
while we're on the topic of Netflix, I just recently started watching Community, which I know I'm late to the party on.
mhm.
But it was one of those things where when it came out years ago, it wasn't something that I was necessarily engaged with or related to
Mhm.
until now. When I give it a try, I'm like, okay, this totally works. After I'd
Yeah,
been in college and kind of seen what that's like and met some of the people there, it definitely made sense watching Community now years later. And seeing how those stories kind of roll out is really funny. I'm only 3 or 4 episodes in. I really like it so far. I think it's really great. You have basically, in a nutshell, for those who are unfamiliar, like I was, you have this cast of students at this community college. It's not one of the highest ranked ones, but you have all these people. You have a guy that's older, maybe he's 50 or 60s, and he's kind of like maybe trying different careers and going to school or going back to school. And then you have, some new college freshmen that are in there and they got their high school, attitude still. And then you've got the main character, I forget his name, but he's kind of this cocky lawyer that had to go back to school because for some reason his degrees were invalid because he did it in a different country or something like that. But all that background information, it kind of feeds into this great chemistry that these cast of characters have, and it's got Donald Glover in it. It's got Chevy Chase, and then a few other people you've probably seen on TV before that I don't know the names of,
yeah.
like I
Joel
said,
McHale. It's funny because Joel McHale is Jeff, the main character you're talking about, the
yeah.
lawyer. And he well, even this is a side note, but anyone watching the Tiger King documentary series, he did a follow up with all the characters, and
Oh wow.
he's the one that hosted it. Yeah, so
So
just
he
kind
kind
of
of had his own little community study group with the
yeah,
cast.
yeah, exactly. He had a community group with them. But yeah, no, Community is one of those shows where I think it's very underrated because one of my cousins suggested for me to watch it, and you watch it, and like you said, it's just funny to see these characters that you're like. wow, I definitely know a person like that in real life. Everyone knows
Yeah,
someone like that. Especially, like I said, if you've been to a community college
yeah,
or taking any college classes, really, you'll see people that imitate them to a T, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
yeah.
And
Chevy Chase
so,
basically plays Clark Griswold. He's like the out of touch, old guy that just says
yeah,
big things. And you've got Donald Glover, who plays the young, cocky athlete from high school, and he acts just like that.
it's
And
funny
then
because people now will only know him as Childish Gambino, but
right,
it's funny because Community was dated back. He wasn't even Childish Gambino at this point. It
right,
was kind of what got him, I guess you could say, into entertainment. But
hmm
yeah, and Chevy Chase, it's awesome because they're just like, it's like they gave him that role and they're like, just go wild, do whatever you want, like go crazy. And Chevy Chase is like, you got it, and he plays his character perfect. I mean, all of them play their character so perfectly.
yeah. But hearing you, talk positively about it, and you've seen the whole thing makes me, hopeful that I'll enjoy the rest of it. But like I said, I'm only 3 or 4 episodes in, so I don't have a lot to go
To
off
go,
of, other than I
oh,
love where they're kind of going. In the two guys that wrote it are the Russo brothers, who also directed Captain America: Civil War, Avengers, Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. So
right.
those are masterpieces of cinema right there.
Yeah,
But
no, the writing on the show is for sure. It's fast paced and it's great. I mean,
yeah,
it's
it's
like,
got that same witty comedy that you get with the Marvel movies, so you can see the
mhm,
resemblance.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, like so, there it is. Y'all heard it, folks. Go check out Community on Netflix. All right, moving right along. Now it's time to talk about music, and I'm really excited about this because for this week, one of my favorite artists put out a new album this past Friday. Dance Gavin Dance put out an album called Afterburner. And let me tell you, I have been nonstop playing this front to back. And you know what? I will go ahead and I'll do the honors. I'll go ahead and talk about it first because
Sure.
yeah, I've got a lot to say about it. So for those that don't know, they released 4 singles off this album. It was in no particular order. It's Prisoner, Lyrics Lie, Strawberries Wake, and Three Wishes.
Hmm.
Um, all fantastic singles. But they surprised us because when the album actually came out, there's a lot of songs on the album that were like completely a complete 180 from the 4 singles released, which I loved because
Yeah,
I love it when artists keep you on your toes.
for sure.
Same with like Fall Out Boy's Mania album. They
Oh,
released. When they released Young and Menace, you were like, whoa, this is like totally different. Um, Same with Dance Gavin Dance. They released their album, and there's one particular song that I really, really enjoy because it showcases not only Tillian's vocals, but of course John Mess's screams. And it's just got some sort of a groove to it that it's like they've never really hit on before, and it's like it
hmm
really showcases the bass and guitar, and obviously Will Swan's guitar is just like insane, like it is every album. But it kind of took more of a instead of aggressive in your face approach, it kind of like took a step back, but in a way that was like it wasn't too suppressed, but it was like Goldilocks. It was just right. It was like perfect amount.
the Goldilocks method.
Yeah, the Goldilocks method, which I think works for them for sure. There's a song called Parody Catharsis,
Hmm.
which is I think it's in the middle of the album and it perfectly just
Track
sums up.
6.
Yeah, track 6, and it sums up. I mean, the entire album to me personally. Some
Hmm.
people might enjoy the others. Obviously, like I said, the singles are great. What do you take away from it? What's your takeaway?
I honestly, I've had like 2 or 3 listens to it at this point, like top to bottom. I mean, I've heard the singles many times, and I was pretty familiar with those. Um, but like I said, 2 or 3 listens through, I was really shocked that this was a Dance Gavin Dance album in a good way. I was like,
Right, exactly.
because their past few releases, especially with Tillian on board, have been just bonkers good. And so, like going through the track list, the first 2 are just solid tracks. That's 2 of the singles. So that was expected. And I love the way Prisoners opened the album,
Hmm.
just like straight into their style, just right off the bat. But the third track, when he starts singing in Spanish and they have that Latin beat kind of over
Yep.
over the instrumental, I was blown away. I was like, this is the kind of stuff that makes them special, when they can throw out some stuff like
Exactly.
that. And to me, that shows not only like versatility, but it shows that you're creatively thinking of how far you can stretch the band with the singular idea of who they are. You know, instrumentally, vocally. It's like how many different ways can we stretch that? And I love when bands do that. And that was the track that sold me on this album. I was like, that is what I know. That's what I want. And so going through the rest of the album, when you get to songs like, for instance, "Born to Fail," um,
Hmm.
and just things like that, "Strawberries Wake," all those songs, they pull so many different angles from the Dance Gavin Dance, I guess, style catalog, if you will,
Hmm.
that I was really impressed with. So far, I lean towards the singles as some of my favorite songs, but I would say as a non-single, track three was just, it blew my mind. I was not expecting that. And
It was
like
a
I said,
good
to hear
shock. It was like,
singing in a different language and different rhythm choices in that really made that track stand off at the very beginning. You know, it's like haven't even got through the rest of the songs yet, and I was really hooked.
yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. I got it right here. Calentamiento Global.
Yeah,
We'll say that's what it. Yeah, that was the one I was talking about. That was a good shock factor. It was like, whoa, this is like nothing we've ever heard before. It's just
mhm.
so it's crazy. And then kind of in the going on to the later half of the album, with let's see, what are we looking at? Parallels. That was one that opened up with that guitar riff that was very just relaxed.
Yes.
It was like they had to basically tell Will Swan, like, "Hey, we know you're an insane guitarist, but take it back a notch. Like, don't be such a good guitarist." And he's kind of like, they're like, "Come up with something simple," and he's like, "Okay," and then just came up with that riff, and it was like, that's still just mind blowing. It's just like such a great riff to. It's so catchy. Another track I really liked was "Say Hi." It showcased John Mess's screams really well. It was kind of like it had that tempo that was it you know, that break in the song where it was him and it kind of mainly drums just slowing it
Yeah.
down, and he
Almost
was
like
kind of like,
spoken word kind of style too. Like he
yeah,
wasn't necessarily screaming the entire, phrase. He would kind of go in and out of screaming between
yeah,
that
it was like the
and the other.
dynamic was going, it was flowing. It was like you're trying to start a car and it's like, and you're like, oh, you're like,
But if
is
you're into
this,
that,
yeah, it's like, is it gonna rev up or is it gonna just go away completely? You're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what direction this is going. My only complaint through the whole album, and this is very very nitpicky, but in past albums of theirs, the very last track was normally it was like kind of they gave everything they had and then that was it. Because with artificial selection, evaporate, it was like pretty much the ending was just it was just pounding you in the face. You're like
Yeah.
boom boom. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like what's going on. And then with their other album, Man of the Year, was the very last one. And same thing. I mean, there's a scream in it that John just held out for like I don't even know how much time, and it was just like you're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But in this one, it's like again, they kind of Into the Sunset's the last track. It's like they kind of took it back a notch, and you're just kind of like, I mean, it was don't get me wrong, it was a great song, but it's just kind of like, oh, again, not what we were expecting. And I think they did that because they're like, well, we don't want you to think the last track every time is going to be us just pedal to the metal.
Right. You definitely don't want to be predictable with them.
Yeah, so that threw
Another
me
thing
off. So I was like, oh, okay, well,
another thing they probably realize is like this whole album, like there's not a whole lot of downtime. And so this was their way to like kind of give you a breather as the listener. Because like each track on this album just like hits you. Not always as aggressive as some of the other ones are in some of the past albums, but it does like song after song after song. There's something new and exciting about it, and this is kind of like their way. And I enjoy when albums kind of do this, is they use the last track as kind of like reflection. It's like now you
mhm.
get a chance to process everything you've heard. I know Under Oath has done that a couple of times, which is really cool because like their albums just pound and pound and pound the entire time. Um,
Mhm.
but then they give you that last track to kind of as a breather. But it goes along with the entire narrative of the album. You start strong and you end soft. But then what you were saying on the last albums where they, just hit you all the way through, and then at the finale they just hit you with everything they got. There's something about that too that just feels so triumphant, and you leave that album thinking about that last song, not
Right.
necessarily like, all the other details, but you like your last memory of the album when you get to the last song kind of sums up the whole thing for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And, again, it's different. And, each album is perfect. And then I'll remember Afterburner is like, oh wow, like they really just let you breathe a little bit
Yeah,
when you when they made you think, oh, we're gonna go all the way. They're like, nope, actually, gotcha. We're just gonna take it back a notch and we're gonna let you kind of think about the album.
I
It's
did
kind of
notice
like,
it was a lot more melodic than past albums, which those are still melodic too, but like this
mm,
one heavily relied on whether it was the guitar melody or
mhm,
Tillian's vocal melody, um,
yeah,
and not so much on like guitar chugs or drum beats as much. I mean, it's still rhythmic, but like you didn't have a lot of those moments like in the past albums where it was like just jamming out, and it was very vocally and melody driven, which I like. I liked it a lot, especially with
oh
Prisoner
yeah,
when they bust out into that giant chorus after all the technical stuff they do in the verses, and they just belt out in that chorus. That to me, that's what they're really good at, is just taking something very technical, very arranged, and then just blowing it out in the chorus into something very melodic and groovy.
mhm.
Like that's the favorite aspects of the band, and so when they capitalize on it throughout the album, especially in the singles, but when it's sprinkled across, it's really awesome to hear.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, the melody for sure was a big part of this album. And I really liked, I think it was One in a Million, track 4, or no, 5. Yeah, 5.
Hmm.
Um, there was a moment in that where the music just broke and it was just Tilling's vocals and he was harmonizing with himself.
Yeah,
I love that because I was like, he doesn't really like Tilling's one of those guys that's like has such an amazing voice, but he's not going to brag about it. And so it's like I like that a song was dedicated to him, just straight up, just going solo and with no other noise, just straight vocals harmonizing.
yeah.
So I really like that aspect, and I was like, dang, that's what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, I feel like he's gonna be what people latch on to when they hear the band. Like for us as musicians, we enjoy and appreciate the instrumentals, but like if I was just to show this to anybody that maybe not be a musician or may not be used to that style, I feel like his vocal and what he
Right.
brings to the band is what gets people hooked.
Yeah, because I think you said it perfectly. Because all my friends and family that aren't musicians like us, I just tell them, hey, listen. I was like, this guy named Tilly, and I was like, that's all you need to know about this. I was like, listen to his vocals; they are insane. And I even had a guy the other day, one of my coworkers. I showed it to him, and he's like, yeah, it's not really my style. He's like, but man, that dude can sing. I
Yeah,
was like, exactly. I'm
it's
like,
nothing against like Johnny Craig or any of the other singers they've had in the past, but
oh
what
no, yeah,
he's
yeah,
done since this band's been around for quite a while now, he just brought new life to it, and they've just soared, with him involved. It's really cool to see.
yeah. And yeah, like you said, because Johnny Craig, the stuff he's got going on, solo stuff right now, that works for him. I mean, that's more his, uh,
Yeah.
that's his style. I mean, it just and who else was it? Was it I'm blanking on the name. Let's start Roll Coda.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Kurt Travis, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that works for him because I listened to them and I was like, wow, that's a good style that he got. It's more just straight rock, and so I'm like, that makes sense for him.
Hmm.
So yeah. Well, anyway, I could talk about this album all day, but I know we got other music to talk about.
What would you rate this one, compared to the other Tillian albums? Where does this one kind of sit for you?
I'm biased, so I'm going to put it way up there compared to Artificial Selection, just because it's branched out. I mean, it's just crazy how much it's branched out. Even aside from their 2 singles, Headhunter and
Hmm.
Blood Wolf. So, I mean, I'm going to put this at like a 9.5. I mean, it's almost perfect to me. I have to give it a few more listens to actually get, you know, a better idea. But so far, yeah, I'm going to leave it at 9.5. Artificial Selection, I give like a 8.5. Just because there was a few tracks that I weren't crazy about.
Hmm.
yeah. So there you go. That's my rating. What would you give it?
I would probably, I mean, even though it's still fresh, I mean, I have to give it some time. But right now, I'd have to say it's my number one. And I know that that's a lot to say at the moment because I may not feel the same way later. But to me, this has like been the most diverse album so far, and the most engaging album. Because with with how they've been, going with the past few albums, they've been, aging like fine wine. So like each album has its own personality, but it all feels consistent. This is the one that's not as consistent with the past, if that makes sense, but in a good way. So
Mhm.
like they've found new ways to reinvent themselves. Like I said, with expanding their genre, to Latin music and all these different things that you've never heard them do before. And to me, as a listener, I look for those kinds of things. So for me, it's up there. Which Mothership was my favorite, um, currently, but I think this one is up there with it. I don't know if it's gonna. I mean, I said it's my number one, but I think that's tied with Mothership right now, and then artificial selection and acceptance speech. But but yeah, for me, it's a good album. Like I was very impressed.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm biased. It's my favorite band, so I'm gonna put them all up there. But I mean, it is a great album. Like you can't say that it's not, even for people that may not listen to them all the time. So yeah, so there you go. There you have it.
All right, so we'll move on to the next album, which is a band called Picturesque,
Mm,
with their latest release, "Do You Feel Okay?" So this album has been in the works for a while. I've been following this band for maybe a year or two now.
okay,
They're fairly new themselves. I think they got started in maybe 2016 or 2017, but they've only put out one album before this.
right.
What got me into them, I found them randomly on Spotify one day while I was at work. And essentially, to someone who's not familiar with them, they kind of are reminiscent of Pierce the Veil, um, Sleeping with Sirens, and possibly even some Dance Gavin Dance thrown in there, stylistically, that I thought was a really interesting mix when I first found them. And after seeing them live a few times, I've really grown to like them a lot. And so with this new
Mhm.
album, I was really expecting, honestly, a lot of the same stuff that I heard on the first album, but that completely changed once I got through it. So the first few singles they had put out, over the past year, were songs like "Swipe" and "Crimes"
Mhm.
and "Pray," and it was kind of giving you a lot of different, variety that the band is capable of, which I really appreciated hearing that. And
Yeah,
then right before they dropped the album, they put out the song "Attention," which is track number two.
and that got my
That is
attention for sure.
that that definitely got my attention and it hooked me. I heard that
Yeah.
sucker and I nearly leapt out of my chair because I said, "This is the picturesque that was looking for on this album." Definitely
Oh yeah,
different from what
absolutely.
they've done in the past, but they took it a completely different direction. And there's like two or three songs on here that are like that, that really give you a new view on who they are as a band and what this album kind of tells you about them. Like I said, you have some of those songs on there that are a little bit more traditional, like their previous album. They were probably done around the same time that they were, probably concepting this new album, but then came up with new
Mhm.
ideas on the way because this has been in the works for maybe a year or two. I think their last album was 2017. Um,
Yeah, so I got it right here. Yeah, 2017, I believe, was the year for that last album.
and so going from that to what does Picturesque sound like in 2020, they did a really good job of making that jump and making you feel like they really thought through that process in a different way to keep everyone engaged. So for me, the highlights of this album were definitely Attention. Um,
Mhm.
Necessary was another single. It's the first track. I love how that one grooves. It's very steady, steady beat on that one. And then there's songs like Swipe and Pray that are a little bit more. Some influences they brought on this album were some hip hop elements, which I thought was really interesting coming from a rock band like this. I thought it added something dimensional for them. so they're not just seen one way. But it definitely gave them more character at the end of the day, for sure. But
Yeah,
my number
absolutely.
one off this album is Attention. I could listen to that song for hours and hours and hours and find something new in it the entire thing. It's such a earworm of a song. The melody,
Mhm.
it's intense, but for me, what makes the song is that guitar riff and that drum beat
Mhm.
that just marry so well. It very reminiscent of like Prince or even Michael Jackson in some ways, which may seem weird to some people, but that's like immediately where my mind went. And even the band Issues has kind of played around with that idea of like this funk rock fusion. Um,
Mhm.
they did that on their song Flexin', which was really interesting to hear because that
Yeah.
was the only song on the album like that. But for me, that's something I would love for them to explore more in the future. But for this band, for sure, Attention is a really cool direction. I feel like if they tried that a little bit more in the future, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I feel like that's something like that will get them a lot more ears than some of their more traditional writing styles. But
Oh yeah.
definitely, this album blew me out of the water. Like I said, it hooked me in by the second track to where
Yeah.
like with Dance Gavin Dance, it took me to track 3 to be hooked. This one hit me with the second one that I was not ready for, but I wanted.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it was. I mean, when I listened to it, it reminded me. There's parts where I was like, especially with the guitars, I was like, man, I feel like Tom Morello is playing these guitar. There's one solo. I was like, whoa, I was like that was like Tom Morello
Yes,
guitar solo right there. I was like, dang. And then there's one
artwork on this
track that
album.
I mean, I had it reminded me of like Muse, The Killers, just straight good rock bands. I mean, another one was The Main. I mean, all those bands. I was like, dang, they could definitely compete with all those bands right there.
Yeah.
And I like that they took their time making this album, obviously, because like it's been 3 years since their last one. I
Mhm.
think they needed that because it's very crucial in the bands, like especially when they first start out, that you don't want to just pedal the metal, get all your ideas out, and be like, okay, go go go, pump that album. You see so many bands do that, and then they kind of, it's like, okay, well now what? You get stuck, in a rut. But I think they did perfectly. Like I said, it's just picturesque. I can now say if I told someone like someone came up to me and was like, "What's a really good, just straight up rock band that's current right now?" I'd say go listen to Picturesque album. Like
Yeah.
if you want some good straight rock, that's what you want to listen to.
And I think the way that they're doing it is keeping it current, like I said, with the hip hop influences, which is really mainstream right now. And then,
Exactly.
and then flipping what we know as rock on its head in a way where you're like, yeah, this has got attitude, it's got groove, and it it's honestly like current and innovative, which is really really cool to be able to hear that in today's world where music is so global and it's so like genre bending already. Like there's so many different songs out there, whether it be on the radio or just bands in general, that just constantly question what the genre that they're put in with each release that they
Right.
have. And this is a band that's doing that for sure.
Yeah. I think that's good to not put yourself in a hole in that sense because if you just label yourself, oh well, I'm this. It's like, well, then you're gonna always stay that. But it's like like you said, they do it in such a way that's like they basically are tricking you into listening to rock. Like you don't realize it's rock because they basically it's like they got a bowl of food, but they disguised it as something different. But at the
Yeah,
same time, at the surface or beneath the surface, it's definitely rock. Like there's no getting around it. But
yeah,
it's good for people that aren't already exposed to that type of rock or music, and so they listen to it and like you said they think, oh, this, like I said, they'll think of Michael Jackson or Prince or Muse or other bands that are big and they're like, oh wow, and then they're but underneath it all it's picturesque and they're who they are. It's perfect.
yeah. And I mean, my final thought would be if for the rock genre in general, like if there's more bands out there that can pull um, this idea off of like how can we take this genre, reinvent it, keep it current. I think that that's what's going to keep the genre moving forward, and will also spring up different bands, that are influenced by that, and
Yeah.
build that community more, and maybe see some more bands like that on the radio.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so the next thing we have is going into the realm of comics. So comics is alive and well. There's a lot of great stories out there, a lot of great writers and artists. Um, and so I'm going to basically, where both of us are going to basically run down, talk about things that we're reading. Since there's not any new comics currently coming out right now, the industry's kind of in a weird spot. But it's a great time to go back and look at back issues, find things that either you haven't read yet or have been meaning to read. And for me, that has been some 90s comics from Image Comics. So Image has put out lots of great stories over time. They put out Walking Dead, Saga, and lots of cool things. But the first thing that they put out was Rob Liefeld's Youngblood. So this is a scrappy little comic that basically put Image Comics on the map in the early 90s. Basically competed with DC and Marvel and became the number two top selling comic of those years. I mean, this book, it's a very divisive book, whether that be the art style or the writing or anything like that. But I'm a Rob Liefeld fan, so this was really cool to visit and basically kind of get a taste of what comics were like back then, and kind of the early ideas and concepts that Image came up with. So, some really wild stuff with these spreads, breaking the panels,
Oh
uh,
wow. Yeah.
but definitely some and very dynamic artwork there. I just love the way he draws people, and I know a lot of people hate it, but I think it's really cool. And then you've got really fun splash spreads like this that there's just a lot of
Oh wow.
action, and while there's not a whole lot of story involved, um, it's just this is fun, action packed Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe. I really enjoyed reading it. It's a 4-part miniseries that first was released. The the Young Blood book, was one of the top sellers at the time, and they're really easy to find now because they printed so many. But highly recommend you check that series out if you get a chance. I'm sure it's available on digital, obviously, because we can't come to a comic store right now. But you can find them. They're the way that they're built. They have basically a part one and a part two. So like the front cover is basically part one. Then you flip it over and you have a part two, and basically it's the two Youngblood teams. You have Youngblood home team. And you have Youngblood away team. Different characters doing different missions. Just to kind of give you some insight on some of these characters, you've got this big tank of a guy, Bedrock. You've got Combat, Chapel, Vogue. Let's see, Die Hard, and Shaft. So that's like your home team, your main characters, and comes with a little card here, collector card that you can cut out and collect all of them. It's really fun. They did that with the X-Men in the '90s as well. So this was kind of like I said, their response to a lot of the X-Force, the X-Men, New Mutants, everything that was like big at the time. This was their version of it. Like I said, Image Comics, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Todd
Mm-hmm.
McFarlane, Eric Larson, a lot of like industry legends. This was some of their humble beginnings, and they got to start after doing some work with Marvel and DC. Broke out and created Image Comics, so that was really cool. Got that one. Um, Read through the first four, and then they have a zero issue that kind of gives you a little origin of the team. But after that, I plan on reading a lot of more of the '90s Image titles, such as Spawn by Todd McFarlane. You've got Savage Dragon by Eric Larson, and then many more after that. So hopefully I can get through all those. And then another one by Image Comics that I'm hoping to get through. Right now, I only have 3 issues, but that's Undiscovered Country. I heard that this book could be the next Walking Dead. As soon as it picks up
Wow.
steam, and could be really interesting. So I was suggested to it by the guy at the Comic Short and Keith Comics, and he said that this
Okay.
could be something big. So I went ahead and bought the first 3 copies on my pull list. So definitely looking forward to read that next, and then kind of go back through my collection and see what else I need to read. So what stands out to you with comics right now? What are you reading? What do you look forward to read?
So I got a few series that come to mind. I don't have visuals like you do, but I've got first and foremost, probably my all-time favorite comic series would be the Sandman universe by Neil Gaiman.
Oh yeah,
Um, for those that don't know, Neil Gaiman he created the Sandman universe way back in I think it was the '90s, '80s, '90s era when comics were big.
that was a good
Um,
time.
yeah, it's been quite a while. But the good news is that for those of you that are like, well, I don't want to go back and waste time reading all that, they just revamped the series last year, and so basically the Sandman universe starts in one comic and it splits off into different branches. So there's different mini series, I guess you could say, within the Sandman universe. So
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman's been famous for doing that. But the new series would be Lucifer, House of Whispers, Books of Magic, and The Dreaming. I personally like Books of Magic the most because it kind of reminds me of like Harry Potter, and if there was a parallel universe to his, that to me is what basically Neil Gaiman created, which is very interesting.
Hmm.
Like I said, each story has its own unique uh, pathway. So if you're not so much into that, you might be more into Lucifer, which is a little darker, but it's also really great. Neil Gaiman is just great at story writing, and all the images he illustrates are just very unique. It's very like your Rob Liefeld. It's very distinct style. So when you see it, you're like, oh, yep, this is a Neil Gaiman comic. You just know right off the bat. So that's kind of one I want to dive back into and start reading. Not only just Books of Magic, but branching off and reading all the Sandman Universe series. Aside from that, also they revamped the Fantastic Four series
Oh yeah.
last year. Yeah, so
No, that's one of your favorites.
yes, yeah, I love Fantastic Four. The only thing is that this new series is a lot different. Whereas the old Fantastic Four comics, people know it's them as a group, and they obviously go off and fight these just giant beasts like Godzilla type monsters, and you're
Galactus.
just yeah, exactly. And so, but this series doesn't really focus as much on that, which I kind of like because it's more focusing on a storyline that's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah.
And they also bring their kids into the picture. So
Oh, that's new.
yeah, so the kids are fighting with them. So I thought that was an interesting spin on it. But yeah, without
Yeah, that's
giving
something
too much
they've
away,
never done before, I don't think.
yeah,
Um,
no, that's never really been touched on. So I thought that was an interesting twist on it. So yeah, I'm gonna get back into that. Like I said, during quarantine, I actually kind of neglected comics, not on purpose, but been mainly focused on music and movies. But those are the two at the front of my list right now for sure that I want to check out.
well, definitely, what quarantine's done is helped me kind of revamp some of my love for all the different entertainment outlets. Like you can only watch so many movies, so many TV shows until you're like, okay, I'm burnt out on that. You can only listen to so many albums until you're like, okay. So like getting back to comics has really helped me kind of find those distractions like we were talking about earlier. And so going back into my collection that I've been working on for years and just kind of saying like, hey, what have I not checked out yet? What have I still have in my queue? It's a lot of books, but now is the time,
Yeah,
because I know
absolutely.
that it's going to be harder. When we all go back to normal, that it'll be different. But it's definitely a good time to kind of revisit all your favorite entertainment outlets.
Well, guys, there you have it. I hope you all really enjoyed listening to this podcast. I know Reese and I had a blast making it.
Oh
We
yeah.
covered all music, movies, TV shows, everything in between. And if y'all have any suggestions for us, just let us know on our social media outlets. And I believe Reese has a update on the future of the podcast.
So as far as these episodes go, we're hoping to bring in a rotation of different guests and friends of ours and kind of promote who they are and what they're doing. And then also possibly reach out to some special guests that could come on and promote who they are and what they're doing. Because I know right now is a really challenging time for a lot of businesses, a lot of professionals out there. And we want to give them an outlet to be able to express that, gain new audiences, and drive some sales for them to help them get through this time. But yeah, hopefully we can have some more people on here besides just the two of us. But we hope you enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to the next episode. And like he was saying, if you have any suggestions on what you want the show to be and kind of help us build this with us, that would be awesome. Just let us know in comments or messages. and be nice because we want to have a great community. We want to come together because this is a rough time, and we're going to use this format to make sure that everybody is doing great, everybody's taken care of, and everybody's staying connected, and everybody's talking and talking about things that they love and that they're passionate about. So that's the main goal with this show, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll stay on here with us.
But before we sign off, we got one more announcement for you, and that is Reese and I have been working on a project called Hill Saint. And Hill Saint is our rock band based out of Dallas, Texas, that showcases Reese McKinney on the drums, myself on the bass, and two of our very close friends, Taylor Bogue, who is on vocals, and Adam Moore on guitar. And we've been working on this project for about a year now. And we have our single, We Are Coming, that's officially out on all music streaming platforms.
Check it out.
We got more material to come, and we'd really appreciate your guys' support on all of our social media outlets through Facebook, Instagram, and just give us a like. Yes, and give us a like, and go ahead and share with all your friends and family. And I think that about wraps it up. So before we head out, we'll go ahead and play our single, We Are Coming, for you guys right now. So please enjoy, and see y'all next time.
Lost behind me, don't know where to go, and I just let the light guide me. It's been a while since I've opened up to anyone, but I feel it's time to let myself unwind. Those who are trying to save face, no longer hiding from a world that's so depriving. As we make our way down the road to absolution, maintaining lives without just resolution. Let's bring the change. Gotta follow anyone, I've let my spirit free. Not thought I lost myself, but I feel my life return to me. My spirit free. I thought I lost myself. I've been set free. Gotta follow